So, my name is Craig Maloney, and I will be talking about emulators and emulation, emulating a trip through my childhood, one machine at a time. So hi, I'm Craig Maloney, and this is my childhood. Let me let you know though, I love computers. I mean, I love a lot of computers. I love a lot of classic computers. There was, when I was younger though, there was, I'm sorry, first off, I'm not going to really talk too much about IBM computers. There's DOS-EMU for that. I don't really have a whole lot of fondness for DOS computers, as it may be obvious. No, not a whole lot of love for this guy, as far as his machinations and whatnot in the computer industry. I mean, he got x86 machines on everyone's desktops though, right. So y'all can emulate DOS as much as you possibly can because you already have the hardware. It's already baked in. So I discovered computers a while ago through the way that everyone back in the 1970s discovered computers, through the World Book Encyclopedia. Unfortunately, because there was nothing a little more up to date, this is what I thought a computer was back in the 1970s, which was partially true. However, it neglected that there was a personal computer revolution. So for the longest time, I thought, this is the only way that I'm going to be able to work on computers, in this giant server room, tape drives, guys hanging out in rather natty-looking shirts. It was depressing. Until finally, I realized, now I'm going to do a little object lesson here. For the first time that I saw an Apple II computer, I only saw the top part up here. And I thought, wow, that's interesting. It's a mini computer called the Apple. I wonder how that works. It wasn't until later that I realized that the Apple could hook up to a television set and it had a keyboard. And I'm like, personal computers? What the heck are those? I can have a computer at my house? I don't have to have something that's about the size of the Empire State Building in order to house my computer? That's awesome. So, unfortunately for my parents, I realized that there were computers out there and that I could have them. So I went to places like Computerland, which was kind of like Mecca for me, or Radio Shack, which had all the TRS-80 computers, or the Doll Hospital and Toy Soldier Shop, back when they actually had computers that they sold.
Lyceum was big too.
I don't think I ever went there, but... And then there was, there's Popular Computing, which is a magazine that I have the entire run of, because I got the premiere edition. It was awesome. It was ahead of time. And I made a list of the computers that I wanted, tried to narrow it down just a little bit, and these were pretty much all the computers. I mean, you get the Heathkit H89, Sinclair ZX80, PET 2001, AIM-65, Apple II, TRS-80 Coco, color computer, the Model 3, VIC-20, and the Atari 400.
You sell for 400, 700, 800?
Well, I was cheap as well. Yeah, well, my parents were cheap as well. Honestly, I would have put together the Sinclair ZX81 or ZX80. Know nothing about soldering to this day, but I was going to put that sucker together if it meant I could have a computer. Then something happened. Something Christmas morning happened. I opened the box, and lo and behold, was my first computer. Ta-da! Woohoo! Angelic Chorus. I had an Atari 400. This isn't actually the Atari 400 that I had. Unfortunately, being a kid, and the fact that I got the 800 afterward, I took it apart. And I couldn't get it back together again. And one of the few times that my dad has actually yelled at me was the time that he stumbled into my bedroom and saw the computer that he had bought for me all over on the floor. It was not a happy camper.
How old were you at Christmas that you got that?
Slight pause. Old enough to know better. No, I'll mention that. I think it was 1982.
Oh.
When it was. I was around 10-ish. So, and I learned basic programming on there. Now, there are three things wrong with this picture. Number one, this is for the Atari 2600. Number two, I don't think anyone in this room has ever actually done programming quite like that. And number 3, programming on the Atari 26.
What did you say?
I said, this is for the Atari 2600. This is a cartridge for the 2600.
Right, I heard that.
Secondly, I don't think any programmer here has ever actually programmed quite like that.
By toggling in a program into a...
No. I mean, like looking like you're some futuristic Buck Rogers person.
Well, we all do that.
Yeah, exactly. And number 3.
You're talking about toggling your program into...
No. Yeah, no, I know. But the other thing is that programming on the 2600 never looked like that, ever. And this was definitely a part of Atari's brilliance in marketing, was being able to come up with covers that made you think that was what was going to be what was inside, but really didn't match reality. So I did a lot of programming. Yep, I did a hell of a lot of programming.
I love that game. I love that game.
That was, yes, lots of programming on that machine. So eventually I got the Atari 800, and that was a brilliant computer. Of course, it is obviously the personal computer that will never become obsolete. I pretty much did that. Later on, there was the Atari ST and the Amiga and that, but those weren't for me. Those computers weren't as great as the Atari for me. So I upgraded to the Atari 800 XL. I got a hard drive for that thing. I actually had a 40 megabyte hard drive hanging off of that thing, SCSI. Paid about as much as the Amiga for it, which in retrospect probably wasn't the smartest thing I could have done, but I rode that wave out. The Atari 8-bit computers lasted from 79 till around 92. I rode that wave from 81 to 1993. So I got a lot invested in the Atari. There's a lot of nostalgia in there. All right. So what is emulation? Emulation is taking basically the computer that's over here, along with all the peripherals that are part of that computer, that make up the computer, because there's only just enough brains in here to run something off of a television set or a monitor. You also have the external drives, like tape drives and all that stuff. You got printers that you can emulate, joystick interfaces. I'm not sure what the heck all this stuff is over here, but I'm sure that's being emulated in there as well. And you're emulating it on your own home computer. So, why would you want to do that? Well, there's a few reasons. Number one, for nostalgia. I mean, I've got 12 years invested in this computer. The only computer that I've got more investment in is the IBM PCs with Linux. Preservation. You may have some old stuff that you want to get in touch with, some old programs. Preservation of old memories. For instance, you know, hey, I wonder what that computer that I had did, or I wonder what the computer, you know, that's my friend has. And also a learning experience, because a lot of these machines were very unique for their time. And there's a lot of things that have been lost over time, like booting up into a computer that's got BASIC right out of the bat. That's gone. The kids that boot up computers nowadays, they don't really have anything that they can boot into and say, this is a programming environment. Yeah, you got Python, you got C, and all that other kind of stuff. And Python brings a little bit of accessibility, but it's a great environment to learn on. And the biggest reason of all is because we can.
That's the big one.
That's the only reason that we really need. The problem with emulating hardware is all of these machines, well, first off, CPM and modern machines have a very minimal bootloader that's in them. On the old IMSAI 8080, you actually toggled that bootloader in there so you can get it to talk to the disk. On modern machines, we have the basic input-output system, the BIOS, that allows it to load its personality off of the disk. Computer really doesn't have a whole lot of personality outside of that. Most of these machines were designed, with the exception of the H89, to not use disk at all. So they would use cassette tapes. I mean, even the PET over there has got a cassette drive baked into it. The problem with that, though, is that because they don't have a whole lot of personality without their respective ROMs, they all need some kind of an OS ROM in order to run. You can emulate the hardware all day long. The problem is the software that's inside of there is what actually makes these machines work. This shouldn't be a problem. I mean, these are 20-year-old machines. Who cares about 20-year-old machines other than a bunch of nostalgic old farts who want to play around with history? This is a problem, though. And the reason it is a problem is because the copyrights on these software pieces, I mean, the ROMs that are in here, they're all software. So they are all owned by someone. So the problem with that is some of these companies outsource their development. You had the Sinclair, which contracted with 9 Tiles Networks for the Sinclair Basic. Microsoft wrote the Commodore Basic. Digital licensed a version of GEM for the Atari ST. Not all of these companies wrote their own stuff. I mean, even IBM contracted Microsoft in order to do Quick and Dirty OS, and Microsoft subcontracted Quick and Dirty OS for MS-DOS. Also, the problem, and unfortunately I went a little too far with this, Apple is the only company that has not gone bankrupt out of those machines that are in there. Most of these companies either went bankrupt, were sold, or both. A lot of these companies were sold off piecemeal, so they broke the companies up. You know, Atari, I'll show a case study for Atari. The problem too is that figuring out who owns what requires a lot of lawyers, and a lot of time, and a lot of digging to figure out who owns what. It's a pain in the ass. So Atari, brief history, started off in the 1970s. In 1983, it was split off into multiple divisions. So you have Coin-Op and Atari Inc. It got merged, it was sold to Hasbro, became Infogrames, which renamed it to Atari SA, blah, blah, blah. Figuring out who owns the Atari ROMs is a pain in the ass. Who owns it? Who knows who owns those? I couldn't get a decent answer online. Part of what exacerbated this, and this is in the book on game design by Chris Crawford, who you'll be hearing a lot of later on because he's one of my favorite game designers of all time, said that when Atari broke off, when Jack Tramiel bought Atari, they were in the red, very deep. And so what he wanted to do in order to get a whole lot of cash was sell off the office equipment, among other things. Well, they managed to sell at auction one of their filing cabinets, blocked filing cabinet. Nobody bothered to open it, except the person who bought it. The person who bought it then tried to contact Atari and managed to find Chris, through the San Jose Mercury News, Chris Crawford's number, who then informed him that this person bought this filing cabinet, and there were like 84 files with different titles of things. The person had bought a filing cabinet with the source code for the Atari VCS and 84 of their games. Had they been slightly less dishonorable, they could have made it very embarrassing for Atari. But they didn't. They decided to try and send it back over to them. So you have filing cabinets with legal documents, with other assorted stuff like that. People don't know who the hell owns what. So technically, of these 8-bit computers, the lowly Sinclair ZX80 is the only one that has ROMs available. And it's only because they made them available via the GPL.
Oh, cool.
So I won't go into a whole lot of the details of it, but apparently because 9 Tiles was the company that created the ZX80, they produced the ROMs. So they made the source code available under the Open OS, the Open 80 and 81 projects. One of the emulators now ships with those ROMs in there. And I have my box of tricks, a Timex Sinclair. Anyone remember this little sucker?
I had one.
Yeah, I had one. Excellent computer. Not a whole lot going on inside the covers, but a really good computer. This is the Sinclair 1500, which was the 16K version of this. The Spectrum basically is this case. Unfortunately, the Spectrum really never made it over here in the United States. Timex licensed it to as the 2068, and then they later on, it was highly incompatible with the Spectrum at the time, unfortunately, so it didn't really catch on over here. And then the 2048 made it, I think it was released in Portugal or something like that. I mean, these things are worldwide. It's also one of the most cloned computers out there, both the Spectrum and the Timex stuff, because they're very simple. They use a lot of off-the-shelf parts, not a whole lot of custom hardware. Anywho, Amstrad was one of the companies that was bought out, they bought out Sinclair Research and made the ROMs available to the emulator community. What that means is that there are a shit ton of really excellent Spectrum emulators out there, including some for the Android. And because they did that, you can actually legally download on your tablet, on your computer, a Sinclair Spectrum emulator and not have to worry about someone trying to knock down your door. The other computer, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Jupiter Ace, has ROMs that are available. This is a computer that was built in Forth. It has lineage to the Sinclair Spectrum in that a couple of the people who worked on the Sinclair Spectrum released this computer. There's about 8,000 of them out there, so if you find them, good for you. There's another version of it that was released. I think it was like 800 or something like that. It's like an order of magnitude or several orders of magnitude less release. Commodore Amiga. It's a sticky little situation. There's a company called Cloanto, based out of Italy, which has says that they have the copyrights. They bought the copyrights from Commodore Amiga for the Commodore Amiga, and they sell a package called Amiga Forever. This is the disc version of it. There's also downloadable versions of it as well. They're about the only legal way, and it seems that everyone else seems to agree that they're the ones who own it. As far as the Commodore 64, they also sell a version called C64 Forever. Yeah, those are Commodore machines. They have a version called C64 Forever, which they sell, which they haven't, I'm going to go with that they have a legal claim to sell it. I'm not entirely sure if that's 100% true, but we'll go with it for now. So anywho, this disc includes several different DVDs. There's 3 DVDs of stuff. So you have the Kickstart ROMs and several games on one disc, and you have videos on the other discs. You don't have to get the physical media. You can get a download version. It's just Windows only at that point. So buyer beware. The Atari ST does not have any ROMs that are available. However, there's an emulator version of the Tramiel operating system, or the operating system, depending on how you want to call it, called Emulators. And what that will do, it's a GPL version of the operating system for Atari ST machines that allow you to boot it up and work with it. So we'll be using that instead of the actual Atari ROMs. On the Atari 8-bit side, there isn't a legal ROM, unfortunately, available, in the sense that there was one ROM that was shipped with PCXformer that people are using to say that that was the license for it. Where the license for the Atari ROMs are, I don't know, unfortunately. I wish I knew better. And I wish that Atari, or whomever owns them nowadays, would do something similar to what Amiga Forever does and just release the ROMs available for emulation. But what can you do? MAME, the multi-arcade something emulator, machine emulator. The fun part about arcade machines is that there's literally thousands of arcade machines, and these are the only folks that manage to actually get arcade machine ROMs available for people to download. The problem is that because nostalgia is lucrative, they'd rather sell them via their own emulator discs, or they'd rather control the rights to them because they're not sure exactly what they have, but they want to make sure that you don't have it. XD has released about 20 games, and we'll show some of those. There's some from video games, GmbH, Looping, and Super Tank. There's one that a gentleman released that never really made it past prototype stage, but he still retained the copyright on, called Robbie Roto, which is probably, that and Gridley are the most famous main things because they're the ones that you could initially, they were the only 2 that you could really bring along. And then Alien Arena, which I to this day cannot figure out how to play. It's an interesting game. So the gist of it, if you want to do legal emulation, do your research as much as you possibly can online, or find other folks that can do the research for you. That's that. There's another problem. And this is a bigger problem. I don't remember if you all remember the 1980s the way that I do, but if you remember the 1980s that I do, you'll remember that don't copy that floppy, 1990s slogan. A lot of these things have copy protection on them. The problem with emulation is that emulation emulates enough of the hardware to really get it to work, but may not necessarily emulate enough of the hardware to do all of the tricky things that a floppy disk, a physical floppy disk can do. So some of these programs might not work. Even if you get the originals, even if you get the original hardware, there may be certain things that aren't going to show up the proper way. And there's a lot of tricky stuff. It's not this game, but see, I have a copy of Balance of Power, and by Chris Crawford, and I'm not sure I could necessarily play this on current hardware. I'd have to find something that is unfortunately cracked. The problem with that is when you find the cracked versions, you also find lovely things like this, where you get to see BBSs and other assorted crap from the 1980s and 1990s from long defunct groups that have managed to graffiti these games so that they could make them available to other folks. This is unfortunately extremely common and is probably the only way that any of these games are going to be remembered, is the cracked versions. So my advice to companies, if they can release these stuff without having all of this cracked stuff on there, that would be great. If you're going to release anything and have any hope of any kind of preservation and not have to worry about some group putting their stuff on your stuff, don't put copy protection on there. Enough said on that. Okay, let's show some games. So these are the emulators that we're going to cover in some small detail. I'm going to make the caveat, unfortunately. This is my childhood. I don't share the memories that you have of some of these machines, so some of these machines are going to get a little shorter shrift than others. Unfortunately, I apologize. One of those machines is the Commodore 64. I never owned a Commodore 64. I owned the Atari. Oh, you own the Commodore 64.
So you do now.
I didn't own it back then. So it's going to get a little shorter shrift. So I apologize if I don't show your machine in a great light, or if I don't show all the things that your machine can do. I apologize for that in advance. Secondly, well, there's no secondly. Let's get on with this. So we'll start off, well, actually, do we want to start with that? Start with the Commodore PET. One thing that the reason that I have some nostalgia with this particular machine is that at our school we had Commodore PETs. And I actually had one of those Commodore PETs. I didn't bring it with me. One of the funny things, this is, I think, the only time that Bill Gates ever got outsmarted in business. Was going up against Jack Tramiel. Jack Tramiel managed to get Microsoft Basic, and he managed to get Microsoft Basic for a site license in perpetuity. The Commodore PET managed to sell, I think, about 1 million machines, and the Commodore 64 is one of the best-selling computers of all time. So, and Microsoft only got a small amount of that particular money back when they thought that Basic wasn't really going to go anywhere. There is an Easter egg, and this is about all I'm going to show on this. Microsoft was a tad pissed about this, that all their branding was being removed. And so they added a little Easter egg where it shows Microsoft on the loading screen. I thought that was kind of cute. So one of the computers that I was really wanted, I mean, to the point of actually drawing chicken lips logos all over stuff, was the VIC-20. I don't know if you remember the VIC-20 at all. Yes. That is the VIC-20 via the Vice emulator. I think it would be great for people who have very bad eyesight
It's like 22 characters.
Yeah.
I could read that if I was sitting in the back.
Yeah. So that's what Hello World would look like on a VIC 20. But the one that I think a lot of you and most people out there would be really thrilled with is the, let's see if I can find it.
So if you had a program that was on a disk or a tape or something, can you get that file in a position where that, the emulators do that?
There are hardware solutions for this, a lot of very creative ones.
Presumably,
Wow.
you
Yeah.
could find a computer that still had a floppy and 8-inch floppy drive.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is that there are hardware solutions for hooking up old hardware to these machines. Really good ones, in fact. I'd like to at some point get an SIO adapter so that I can see if I can snag some of this stuff off of my own Atari disk before they all crumble into
Yeah,
dust.
like get the Space Invaders up for your Atari 800 off the cassette.
Seems like a good thing for a
The
makerspace.
VIC 20 and the C64 supported a cartridge, like a lot of the computers did.
Yeah.
Is there ways of getting the stuff off of those?
There is.
Ooh, stop it.
The thing is, a lot of people have done the hard work for you online. And that's, unfortunately, you get into the gray area because I have the cartridge, do I have the right to run it? Some would argue, yes, you do, because, but I don't necessarily have the means to do it. Others would argue, you don't really have it unless you actually are prying ROMs off of there and reading it off of the machine itself. Where I would follow that, if to be 100% on the side of good, would be figure out how to get it off of that machine. There are programs that you can run on the actual hardware in order to do it. It's kind of a pain in the butt.
I've got access to an EEPROM computer.
Right.
I still have my cartridges.
So one of the other lovely things about the Commodore 64 is it takes forever to load. Which is going to be a common theme with several of these machines.
Emulating the tape drive.
Well, the Spectrum does emulate the tape drive, and I will do that to comedic effect later. Let me bring up the Atari real quick, because the Atari stuff isn't going to take nearly as long. So this is Atari 800, which is an emulator for the eponymous Atari 800.
You don't have a cartridge in.
I don't have any cartridges in there right now. Okay, here we go. Commodore, back to the Commodore. This is a game called Bastard Operator from Hell in the Server Room. It's released in 2002. Takes a little while for it to get its bearings, but once it does,
Actually, I have it open.
and you have keyboard control, go into the server rooms, going on, and you're trying to, from what I gather from this, from my really brief take a look at it, you're trying to get people out of your server rooms.
Oh, jeez.
And you can punch them. Of course, you're really ineffective at this point until you can get some. There you go. Enough of that one.
You just did it.
So that was a fun one. All right, the Atari 800. My baby. I sent a note to Chris Crawford asking him if this stuff was in the public domain. He assured me that it was. Oh, shoot. Sorry, let me see if I can bring this up here. Should have booted up with this. A lot of these will support joysticks as well. I know the Commodore stuff was kind of weird with the joystick though, so I never got it really working when I tried. This is a game called Excalibur. Excuse me, sorry. We won't be emulating the Apple, unfortunately. You are Arthur, and you are trying to unite all of Britain in this game.
Cool.
Is that possible?
It is possible. Apparently people have won this game. I am not one of them.
Wow.
All right.
Yeah, tribal.
Okay, so you go through, this is your Knights of the Round Table, with a lot of names backwards. So you have Sir Kay, you have Drawfrack, which is Crawford backwards, Stremus, which is Summers backwards, and Gnostica, which is Atkinson backwards as well. That you can gift, honor, banish, etc. You have the various lands that you can do tribute with, attack, do prestige, get news about. And then you have how much you want to gather from these folks. I'm sorry, how much you have from these folks. And then this is Merlin. And Merlin allows you to do things like see different rulers and such. Come on, behave. Not you behaving. Oh, the joystick's acting weird, of course. Yay, emulation.
Yeah, practice.
There we go. No, it's being really touchy with me. And then you can go outside and you can see the countryside and you can visit each of these different places. This was some heady shit at the time, let me tell you. Being able to scroll.
Yeah.
All right. One other one. Eastern Front. This was the first one that had a scrolling play field. Again, really advanced for the time. Your goal is you are, I believe, the Germans, and you're trying to take get the Russians out of your backyard. I'm just going to do that move for the time being. Anywho, enough of that. This is a highly recommended game. Alright, let's get out of this. Alright. Atari. Get the run out here. So this is running off of a GNU operating system, or at least a GPL version of an operating system. And go back here, get a floppy disk. So you can boot stuff off of it. It's actually a pretty, as much as I know of the Atari ST, which is not a whole heck of a lot, excuse me, it is pretty faithful to what I recall of this. So you can emulate such things as the Amiga bouncing ball. Or we could actually go to the actual Amiga and do that. So why don't we do that? Actually, let me do one more thing at this one. Now these are some pretty advanced machines for the time. It wasn't for a while before IBM computers, IBM compatible computers could actually do stuff like this with VGA. I mean, around the same time that this machine was released, you had stuff like CGA, which has anybody seen the 8088 demo that they managed to get? It was on a regular IBM PC computer. Apparently it breaks all of the emulators out there, but it's pretty heavy stuff. Look up on YouTube, 8088 demo, I think is what it's called. Pretty cool stuff. Thank you, enough of that.
I had an
Show you the Sinclair. I'm sorry, let's do the Amiga first. There we go. Now, some emulators spend their time trying to emulate everything about a particular machine. The Sinclair emulators, some of the ones that are available on Windows, I don't know if you're familiar with the Sinclairs, but this had 1K of RAM on it. And you could get a cartridge that you could put on the back of it. And that cartridge would give you 16K of memory, which was phenomenal. The problem was that if you so much as bumped this machine and managed to knock that cartridge loose, it would cause it to crash. There's an emulator out there that has a selection for the wobbly desk, or something along those lines, which eventually, randomly will crash your machine. Why you would want that can only be because you have fond memories of losing all of your stuff. It's inexplicable, but there you have it. So you have games like this for the Amiga. Now see if I can.
The floppy disk noise.
Yep. So this is Katakis, which is available from the company Factor 5. It's a side-scrolling shooter. Takes a little bit for it to get its stuff together. That's a little from this, obviously. Now I may play. So you have your basic shooter, and you have my basic, I can't play games in front of people. Let me get out of this.
And you call yourself a gamer.
Yeah,
He never said he was a media gamer.
I didn't say it was a good one. So how many folks remember the TurboGrafx 16? It's an awesome system. And one of the best games on that system by far is Bonk. Bonk's Adventures. It got renamed for whatever reason to BC Kid. It is so 90s. I think my machine's a little slow for this, actually. So you can bop them with your head, you can jump, bop them.
Do you get brain damage?
And you can pick up various things later on. They give you better strength and whatnot. So it's a cute game, really fun. And you can pick it up over at the Factor 5 site, which I will show you later on. All right. So now the Sinclair ZX81. Who has fond memories of the ZX81? Wow. Okay. Tough crowd. The emulator's name is SZ instead of SX. So it's as fun as it sounds. Every key on this keyboard here has, on the very top of it, a basic command on it. So for P, it's print. So if you type the key print or key P after you type in a line number, it'll complete it for you. That's not a feature, that's tokenization at work.
Each key had about 4 functions on it.
It does. It's confusing as all hell.
And the functions are like the whole word print command.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting trying to figure out what the key was going to do in which situation.
Which is why I have one in front of me. Funny you should mention that. They have a virtual keyboard on the machine. I forgot to show you that. So, 230. Let's see, draw. Where's draw? This is why live demos are so much fun. I'm not even seeing draw on here. That doesn't matter. So you run that, there's hello, and there's a dot in the center. That's pretty heady stuff.
You felt good too, didn't you?
You did! I was playing around with this stuff, and I got things drawn on the screen. It's like, I haven't had this feeling for a long time. Usually in order to get any stuff on that screen, it takes a lot of libraries in order to do that. This is like, you want to draw, I'll draw. You want to plot, I'll plot. You want to do circles, I'll do circles. Great stuff, great stuff. So let me show you what some people who know what they're doing can do with it. So you have games, etc. Now, what would a modern computer be without Tetris? Not much, I tell you. I dare say. This is the mark of a modern machine, when it can play Tetris on there. So you press a key in order to play, and there you have Tetris
Black and white.
in black and white, using L's for the, I'm not going to play a full thing in Tetris, that's just embarrassing.
You just did.
So there's this,
Therapeutic.
That was embarrassing.
and it was embarrassing. So yeah, the Sinclair ZX81, there's emulation for that. Oh, I almost buried the lead here. And you can play around with its predecessor, the ZX80, which is even more capable, if you can believe it. Not. What am I doing wrong? And there you have its lovely blue keyboard. Again, pretty awesome stuff. But as much as this computer sold, the Spectrum over in Europe was an amazing thing. First off, it is the best-selling computer over in the UK. And I wish I had a Spectrum to show you, but this is about as close as I can get at the moment.
Actually, it's fall for his.
I know,
Sorry.
That's all right.
I got a 2068.
Do you really?
Yes.
That's awesome.
I still have it.
I'm so jealous.
And I have cassettes for it too.
So this is what would show up on a Sinclair ZX80. This is the, I'm sorry, not the ZX80, the ZX Spectrum 48K model.
It's a lot of memory.
Yeah.
Well, it gets better. So I'm just gonna do a quick hello. It has lowercase out of the gate, which is a plus because the ZX80 did not, or ZX81 did not. Later models, which you can select here, give you a tape loader
Wow.
and 128 basic. 128 basic is amazing. So let's say you're printing along. Oops. And you want to, but you wanted, okay, let A equal 5. But you don't want that numbering. Let's see if I can get that in here. A lot of demos.
Bless you.
Make sure. Is that one? It has baked in renumbering. How cool is that? You can renumber your programs right out of the gate in ROM.
Remember the go-to statements.
Yeah, exactly.
It will.
I think it will. I think it will.
Yeah, it is.
I didn't put a go-to in here, but okay, you run, blah, 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 crap. Whoops. All right, there's a problem with this Spectrum, though. As much as it is an awesome machine, the interface that you used for the joystick plugged into the back here, and none of the systems, except for maybe a handful of different models, came with joystick ports baked in. So there was an interface called the Kempston, which allowed you to hook up joysticks to it, and then it would act as though you were pressing these keys in turn. And this system is just baked with hacks. It is the most hacky system I think I have ever seen, but it's so beautiful. Let's see if I can start right here. Yeah, oops. Okay. You can watch Craig completely suck at games in real time. Stop the tape, okay. You can stop the tape. Let's see. Library recording instructions? No. Start the tape, okay.
Yep, those lines when it's
Yeah.
loading the tape.
Maybe that's not working. All right, let me show you something else that's really kind of neat. There's a gentleman that created a 8-bit Bach. $128K. Now, what I'm going to show you here, I'm going to turn off all the fast loading because these are actually emulating tape cassettes. And one thing about tape cassettes is they are slow. They are extremely slow. As you can attest to, they are very slow. So I'm going to turn off all of the trapping that it has. And hit play. Now, while it's sitting there loading all this stuff, I'm going to go on to the next emulator. Because I have the luxury of being able to do that. And this next emulator is the X-Ace, which emulates the Ace. I'm going to turn the volume down on that. Just a bit. That's the loading screen. So that's still the Spectrum. We'll get back to that later.
Why would you turn off all that fast loading?
Because you are nostalgic for the past. You want to be able to listen to those lovely dulcet tones. Plus there were some load screens that some of these things had that were kind of cool. But yeah, I mean, this is... Why are you emulating old computers on your modern hardware? Because you can. Because you want to.
Because I like that stuff.
So this is the Jupiter Ace. The only interesting thing that I'm going to show you about the Jupiter Ace is that it is a computer based on Forth, and I know absolutely nothing about Forth except this command, which shows you all the commands that are available in Forth.
Go for it, got it.
Thank you. For a machine like the Jupiter Ace that only had 1K of memory, Forth was an excellent choice of language because it gave you about double the capacity that you got under a basic machine. And it also gave you structured programming, which is a huge plus compared with basic and go-toing all over the place. It never really caught on, unfortunately, and only 8,000 units were sold.
Were there games for that?
8,000. There were games, there were tapes available for it. I didn't do a whole lot of research on it, unfortunately, mostly because I don't know anything about the machine. So
What version for it?
whatever one they had with it, I don't remember. I don't know. Maybe 74. I don't know what the version numbers of Forth are, unfortunately. And while this is still loading, you know, I'm just going to can this. It takes a while for it to load. Let's just put it that way. Enough said. So let's play some games. These are arcade games that are available via MAME, that are freely available. They can download tonight. There are known problems with most of these games, unfortunately.
So I got my joystick.
You can play them via keyboard. Some of them are better than others on the keyboard. Unfortunately, there's no sound in this particular one, and I really have
Well, you got the sound turned down still.
No, you're right, I do. Jack it up. This is a prototype called Teeter Torture. You are, well, I won't spoil it right now. But problem with the XD games is they take a little while to load.
There it goes.
You're this little cannon thing at the bottom, and you're trying to get rid of these weights. On either side of you are plungers that go to a keg of dynamite in the center, inexplicably for whatever reason. If you run into those things, you die. I'm just going to sit here and let these things fall, because you can do that. But if one of those plungers hits the very bottom, you blow up. That, my friends, is what passed for a game back in those days. This is a much more superior game. This is called Victory, which I think actually saw release. It uses a dial, so I'm going to use the mouse on the computer. And it also has sound. And the sound is working. As far as I know. any questions, by the way, or?
I
Yeah.
have one that's probably stupid.
That's fine.
I was wondering, is there a way to play any of these like online or like multiplayer?
There aren't any online games, but we will get to being able to play some of them in a browser. I'll show that.
Unit test pass. Thank you. Good luck. Get ready. Player one. Get ready. Player one.
So it's unfortunately a little hard to control.
You drive like this?
Yeah, I do. I think the subtitle of this should be Craig sucks at games.
Congratulations.
Yeah, but I still got a high score, so.
Top 10 player list.
Yeah, but ramming things.
So let me play one more game on here, looping. Oh no, not that one. Looping. Does looping work? Looping work.
Thank you. Point. Number one. Number two.
Pull up, pull up.
Point. Number three.
There we go. There you go. This won't be long. There you go. And you're supposed to destroy the terminal.
You could co-pilot a flight here.
Yeah, no. Too soon, too soon.
It's never too soon.
And there's a few other ones that I want to show you real quick. The Internet Archive, well, first off, one of my favorite game systems is the Vectrex. And one of the things that I remembered when putting this together is that the Vectrex has made all of their games and all of their OS public domain. And I didn't include it in this presentation because you're welcome. The Vectrex isn't really a computer, but it is an awesome game system. And it is emulated very well in JavaScript. I'm going to turn the overlay down so you can see it. Unfortunately, I don't think it has sound. And my browser's a little slow. But I don't know if you guys remember Mindstorm, which was the default game that came on the Vectrex. Basically, it's asteroids.
Oh, okay.
There was a Star Castle up there. I can play that one. If you want to see me suck at that game, I can do that. Star Castle?
One thing I noticed about this one here is it's vector graphics.
Yep, the whole system was vector-based, which made it extremely unique, somewhat expensive, and somewhat of a joy to program. I know several people that have programmed it. It's a Z80 based machine, but yeah, and so that's available, and I'll post a link in there. The Internet Archive also has several of these things. I didn't mention MESS, which is the, I'm going to screw up this acronym as well. It's an emulation for consoles and for computers. The reason I did it is its focus isn't really on computer emulation as much as it is console emulation. But scarily enough, I don't know if you remember the AIM-65 that was back in the back a ways. Let's see if I can find the picture of it here. You're gonna be a pain, aren't you? Yes, you are. Here we go. This computer right here The screen on it is basically a calculator screen with a few extra bits for the diagonals. There's an emulation in MES for that computer. And I know absolutely nothing about that computer whatsoever. It is scary to have this little calculator thing ask you for instructions and you're like, I don't know what the heck to do with this thing. But yeah, so yes, there are emulations available for MES. I just didn't really cover it because it's not really its focus.
Wasn't that based, was that based on the Rockwell AIM chip?
Yes, it was. It was
Yeah,
the
okay.
AIM-65. Come on, back. All right. Internet Archive. I'll touch on this really brief. There's several things that it has. Whether these are legal or not, it's a library. So generally speaking, libraries get better permissions than you or I do about preservation because that's their business. Now, they don't let you actually download any of the ROMs from here. At least they don't let you download any of the ROMs from there. What computer? Oh, that's just wonderful. Now, this is one that you're probably not going to see outside of a compilation disc because Activision goes out of their way to make sure that their stuff doesn't show up. I'll show you one other site as well. And then we'll be done.
Will these links be available?
They will be available.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah, because catching all these links like this is going to be impossible.
Yeah.
World of Spectrum, I wish more forums were like this, and I wish more communities were like this. They actually went through, asked all of the developers if they could have their permission. Most of the developers have given their permission, so they have, I would consider one of the largest permission-based, yes, you may download sites as far as any tapes. I think they have ROMs, they have books available on there as well. So they've really done their homework. The only one that I think comes even close would be the Amiga community. Atari, I don't think, there's AtariMania.com, but I don't think that they've actually gone and done most of the homework on figuring out what is available and what isn't. I think it's more of a send us the DMCA request and we'll comply versus we have your explicit permission. Take that for what it is. And I have a feeling that these aren't going to work. Hello. Wow, that's that's an Intellivision. Yeah.
So this is at real speed, not at
Yeah, I think it's more the fault of my computer than anything.
How is that running? It's running in your browser?
It's running it via JavaScript in my browser.
Oh, JavaScript.
Yeah. And it looks like this isn't going to work either. All right, roll credits. So these are the emulators. These are some of the sites. Again, World of Spectrum is amazing. It's an amazing community. I'm glad to have found it. One other thing too, I mentioned emulators on these machines. Of course, I didn't have it powered up. Again, C64 Forever and Amiga Forever, where you can get your Commodore fix. JupiterAce.co.uk for your Jupiter Ace fix, because I'm sure you're all going to go out there and download that as soon as you possibly can. The SC81 for ZX81. Spectaculator, which I'm going to demo on here. Yeah, a bunch of those wonderful things. So that's pretty much it. Thank you. Yes, yes.
Is there a way to get all those links?
Yes, I'm gonna put them in the discuss mailing list, along with a couple other emulators that I didn't cover, like the Z80 emulators. And as soon as this powers up, I'll show you what the spectaculator looks like.
Don't disconnect it.